see my current setup right now. We are running something from Black Armory, something from Forsaken, something from last year's DLC, Shadowkeep. And that's important because all those things will not be usable come Season 12. See, there's really only one way that the game can actually fix the problems that Bungie thinks is a thing. And it's a system that will probably never get released. So, currently they think that the meta needs to change. You know, the gear that we granted for needs to change, simply because we still use it. Now, I can see some case for this. You know, look at something like Revoker or Luna's How. These are definitely overused. But I don't run them. See, personally, I'm still running gear from almost 2 years ago, Bad Omens. I had to come across a better thing to run, but that's not on me. See, I look for tracking module, cluster bomb. And after hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of potential drops for a roll of that on a rocket launcher, I've only ever come across other Bad Omens. See, it's the fault for Bungie for not adding in enough variety to allow the player base to pick and choose what they want to run. You know, I'm over here, again, running a blast furnace, a aggressive versus post rifle, which is completely not meta. I don't run Revoker. Now, yes, I run Telesto, which people argue is meta, but it's an exotic and it's staying. There's nothing going to be changing that. Even look at my gear. You know, now this is all from this season, except for Iron Will Estimates and my Iron Will Hood gear that I will be swapping out shortly due to higher stat rolls. So I got lucky with this season, so I'll have my gear till at least next year. But this is not due to me running the same thing over and over again. I want to change, I just can't. Masterworking is such an expensive thing. Number two is you're putting into this. If I want to go and switch my energy archetype, take a look here. I need 3 enhancement cores, 3 enhancement prisms, which is 30 cores, and then a Ascendant Shards with 100. It's 133 enhancement cores just to change that type. Look here. I don't even have enough. If I wanted to change that right now, I couldn't. Now, yes, I do have an Ascendant Shard already. I have the golf ball. That's from other things from grinding a lot. And yes, I have, you know, enhancement prisms. But if I were to start off as a brand new player, it's not obtainable. So Bungie, I mean, they claim they want to change the meta for, you know, power creep, but they also made Hard Light and Intense Wards a thing. They're only made power creep worse. You have a weapon that kills an insanely fast TTKs that completely blow everything out of the water, and then you have exotics that completely negate a TTK, giving you invulnerability for 5 seconds, or 0.5 seconds. So how can Bungie actually fix this problem? Well, it wouldn't be easy, but I've got a few ideas that potentially could work. So to start off, you need to have a new weapon and armor system. You can call it, you know, the Armor Weapons 3.0. Just go off their, you know, patterns. And really all it does was just add more customization to your setup. And also you have an auto rifle you got from Ingram. You know, it would start off as a base auto rifle frame. You can still use it, but it's the most basic state. Still fired, still function, but there'd be no sight. Ammo would be very basic, what have you. Of course, a Crucible would still perform relatively well, but it wouldn't have any perks on it. It'd be nothing there, it'd be the base. And you would then go by upgrading. It's your next goal is to get a sight, to get ammo, to get a stock, get things that give it its perks. So, let's say you get something next. Now, let's say you get a scope. Well, this scope might work on all other rifle classes. It wouldn't work for all of them, but it might work for a large majority. So, what does that mean? That means that you actually have customization throughout gear. If one thing changes, it changes. But you can still put it on everything you have there. So, let's say, you know, take a summoner, for example. Let's say we swap its magazine out for a legendary arc magazine. It's not make the archetype arc. It's not a arc instead of solar. Allowing us to go back to the older system where you could change these things. I think it's a pretty nice system when we had it, personally. That's just me. Let's say you swap it out now with an exotic barrel. Now this barrel would give it the perks of, you know, Zealous Supercell. It would, in, you know, every sense, be a Zealous Supercell, so it would be toned down. Legendary frames can only go so far. So it would have that perk, so it just wouldn't be as powerful. So, let's say you swap out, you know, the stock for something better. Or, you know, next season, when you need to have more powerful, you know, enemies you're killing, you get different ammo. Or you get something that makes it more powerful type of ammo. That way you actually have something that you can change. Within reason. So, to me, that's the only way to actually properly fix this power creep meta. Because you'd be having so much customization that a 0.7 TTK on something isn't that absurd for a lot of different types of gear. Granted, you have the proper rolls on your stuff, the proper perks, the proper types of things. You could potentially have everything you'd want. And to me, it'd be definitely a strange system. Especially compared to what we have right now. But it'd be one that'd work. So I think so. As we rush over here, my next point's kind of labeled out here.
But it's not over.
So, it just, to me, it's more of a thing of, it would fix the power creep, because you're actually able to build up these killing machines. You'd have thousands upon thousands of those options. You know, simply having it where every single auto rifle in the game has a lot more customization, and it can be brought across everything. It really allows you to actually change different things. And to be very easy to balance. I mean, let's say there is a exotic perk on something that is insanely broken. Let's say it allows every weapon to, let's say, have the old arc load effect on every kill. Or something stupid like that. Or even something minor that just puts it a little bit too much over the edge for all archetypes. You could nerf it. You know, just nerf it on its own. Find the archetype, see it's a problem, and nerf it. Then you can go and say, okay, it's only broken on auto rifles. So then this one gets nerfed on auto rifles. It'd be a way to balance everything. So you could have auto rifles, scout rifles, pulse rifles. They all run the same thing. But the actual differences would come from the rest of the perks, the frame. Just a small little perk on there. It really wouldn't be too much. I don't think so. And now think about armor too. Now armor is where I'm really upset about, because this is where you're putting in the huge investments. You know, you're quite literally putting in hundreds upon hundreds of masterwork cores, or just enhancement cores now, whatever they are, legendary cores, whatever you want to call it. Putting hundreds upon hundreds of those into your gear, and then come a year, you'll have to get a brand new set. Probably with the stack rules, which basically makes it you don't want to switch your set ever. It seems to be kind of weird to actually have it on a yearly system. So, what do you do here? Well, it'd be a very similar system. You kind of upgrade as you go. You would swap out bits and pieces as the season progresses as you get better gear. And I think it'd be a system that could actually benefit the game. You know, just a little bit. Out here real fast. So essentially, it would just divide up the
Zone B
overall
captured.
investment,
You
which
have zone
will actually allow
advantage.
for more change. You know, currently all my gear right now will only last for that 3-season mark, except for my bond, which I'll have to upgrade at some point. But it's just a bond. There's no stat investment on that. It's just the gear investment, which is annoying but understandable. I can somewhat allow myself to lose that bit of gear. I'm trash at the super. But no, but just like just having a gear cap isn't going. It's not going to work because there's so much investment put in. There really isn't any difference between gear. It's not like it's special. You have a stat roll, which is hard to get already. It's hard to get above 60 stat, even well, usable 60 stat, I should say. Because there's just so much. I mean, it's almost too much, if you ask me.
Zone B lost. 3 minutes remaining.
I really do. So, how do we fix this? Well, let's think of base helmet, alright? You have the base of the helmet, so you have a visor, you have the armor on it, whatever. You just continue on, add more stuff, even if it's some just random BS thing. Just have it there. Now, it actually allows us to swap stuff out. We have a more gradual build-up. You would, let's say, instead of dividing the 130 into 10 different pieces of gear, putting 13 cores into each thing. That compared to the 130, it means you want to, let's say, switch out a piece of gear. Let's say you have something over time. It's the same investment. Still putting the same amount of cores in. It's just so much more gradual. Because let's say, okay, let's say like me, you have a piece of gear that has to go away. You'd be switching 13 cores for that season. Or if you start off, over time, you would get more and more pieces. It would make sense to slowly upgrade. You wouldn't have to worry about having one massive upgrade and be divvied out. You know? Then fine. Let's say PvE. Well, have the stat gear actually increase. Let's say in Season 12 they introduce brand new stuff to where the gear is now base, 200 stat is what it comes down to. So to actually do anything in Crucible, or in, well, let's say upper Crucible, so like comp or whatever, or in, normal PvE for like raids and whatnot, you need to have at least 100 resilience to even stand a chance. Well, okay, so let's say my gear right now. Let's just take my gear. My gear, I'm looking at a solid 58 resilience. It's not that high. It's relatively low. So if I want to stand a chance in the next season, I would have to get an extra, 42 resilience to even just survive just a little bit. Alright. So have that happen. Have the gear have higher stats. Instead of getting base 60 stat, it's now 120 stat. Instead of this gauntlet being a 32 recovery, which is insane, by the way. But instead of being a 32 recovery, it is now 64 recovery. It boosts that up. Your old gear is still your old gear, but now the stats are higher. No, of course, in PvP, to actually fix this issue, it'd be the average. So if I have a 100 resilience, and the max is 200, I would have 50 resilience in PvP. Now, of course, aside for trials, or Iron Banner, where the stats do matter because there's light level advantage. That's where it would change. But it'd still be a balanced overall experience, or you just don't have it and you still have it be the average, and that's still what it is in PvP. Doesn't really matter. Either or. But that's a way to actually change between the two areas. The enemies are harder, but they don't seem harder because we were still at that powerful level. And the same would go for every other stat. Take, sure, grenade recharge rate, or all other recharge rates. They would take longer normally, except you have it where it is again. So if I want to get a 60 discipline stat, next season, or season 12, I'd actually need to get 120. Seems pretty reasonable, allowing us to actually get higher stat gear. So the whole thing is that it'd be more worthwhile to grind, you know. We could grind out for our gear rather than simply being unable to use the good stuff anymore because they put a time limit on it. Again, bonds don't matter. What matters here is actual investment. Now, this actually had no investment because I got it from the dungeon, but nonetheless, there's still an investment worth of gear on here, or the cores. Now, yes, I can hopefully get some activity that drops, you know, the stuff, and sure, but it's not a valid way, I think, personally, to this allow us to have just the lack of gear, to have us delete it because we can't use it anymore as a time limit. It's just dumb. So the basics of the system would pretty much follow as you would still have your common, uncommon, rare, legendary, exotic gear, but they're all split up. So the base of the gear is the base of the gear. You know, a legendary base auto rifle, let's say a pulse rifle here. This blast furnace is legendary base, but then I get, let's see, my collections was an example. Here, Bad Juju. Bad Juju has its exotic perk, String of Curses. Kills you full of magazine, increase damage for short duration, and grants super energy based on the strength of String of Curses. Fires full auto. So let's see how String of Curses without the full auto, because full auto would be a trigger system. So everything on there. So you'd put this perk on there, on the legendary base, and that's what it is. It's String of Curses. Kills would refill the magazine. They would increase damage for a short duration and grant super energy based on the strength of the String of Curses with a reduction in damage and super energy with its legendary. And the full auto wouldn't be there. Whereas if you put Bad Juju Frame, which would fire full auto, but it wouldn't have all this stuff. It would still have some of this, you know, the perk-wise. We would still have some of the things. But for the most part, it wouldn't have it. But it'd still be an exotic. So legendary with exotic parts on it, all the exotic parts would still be legendary. But the exotic with the legendary part would still be an exotic. It'd still be there, it's just you could increase it further. So, I mean, it'd be more of a grind, sure. But it's a better grind. And come the next, season when our gear is still usable, have a greater chance of actually getting a better part, making us, over time, change more the meta they want to get rid of. It would come a point that eventually all of Luna's Howl would get phased out of existence. Let's say there is a Luna's Howl roll that happens that's spread across 4 seasons, that after this 4th season, Luna's Howl is back. That, for that season only, it would be there. The next season, it'd be degraded, it'd be gone. Let's say Magnificent Howl, let's say that comes out. And then you have everything else, like Zen Moment, whatever, everything that makes it the weapon. But Magnificent Howl is going to be, phased out of existence the next season. That would happen, and you would see a decrease in numbers of use of this. The meta would change. But the overall piece of gear wouldn't be changed. It'd still be upgraded. You'd swap it out for something different, some other random perk instead. So we're still swapping our gear, the meta is still changing, we're still building up our weapons. But we're also losing that small bit of what we had. Because all in all, the system they want to introduce is pretty much criminal. I mean, they literally want to resell us items that we already have, that we've earned already. Because they're too lazy to actually sit down and think of a better solution. I mean, after all what they've done, after all those terrible DLCs, terrible decisions, they owe us. We're the people that are paying for their content, the ones who've allowed them to have success, and we're the ones that are actually letting them make money. And they really do owe us something better than what they're currently producing. And sure, I understand, a lot of the changes that they've put down so far are simply on paper, but how Bungie normally acts with these things, I have zero hope going forward. Quite simply, I don't see a way that the community wins this one. There's so much that is just bad. It's like they took a bunch of ideas, threw it all together, and came up with a product that they knew wasn't going to succeed in the long run, but they tried anyways. Look at Destiny 1, for example. We had a sunsetting system that got phased out because people hated it. It was annoying to regrind for all your gear again when you invested time into your gear, but it's even worse here because there's actual investments. D1, there wasn't too much investment wise. You got good gear for your good overall rolls, all your intellect, discipline, strength. So that was what's annoying. But here you have those same rolls and you have masterworks. So I don't understand what they're thinking here. And sure, the system that I've proposed isn't perfect. I see a lot of issues with that, mainly just how much grinding you'll have to do. If you split a piece of a simple weapon, this blast furnace, split it into 5 parts, to get something good, you need to get 5 times the amount of gear. Now, of course, again, with the other thing I said before is that all rifles might share the same thing. You know, pulse rifles, scout rifles, and even some sniper rifles might share a similar scope. I guess this used to be pulses and scouts and autos would share similar sights. Maybe the ammo would be probably the same across those as well, or whatever other ammo types. So they would share similar perks, but other things they get really screwed in that regards. But that's the only way I can actually see them introduce a system where we're actually upgrading our gear over time in a lot better way than simply having sunsetting. Again, I'm someone who likes to maximize my potential gear, so if I find a better stat roll, like here's a 6.5, for example, I'd probably run that instead. Because personally, it is a better roll. But it also takes a lot more investment. That's why I haven't straight up just gone and changed this just yet. I'm still waiting for that higher roll, that 6.7, that could magically up to 6.9, the 70, that could potentially drop before I actually upgrade. But I will be forced to upgrade this, and this come season 12. So, what'll happen there, I really don't know. I'm hoping that hoping this gets changed. But overall, I don't see any way the community wins here without Bungie making insane decisions that would completely change what we know about the game. And it's possible they're already doing that. We know nothing. But because we know nothing, we also have a right to complain early on. And maybe they'll change, maybe they won't, but I'm not a fan of losing this blast furnace or its bad omens. There's only one other aggressive burst pulse rifle in the game from the raid, which maybe will last an extra season, I don't know, depends what they have. So I'm okay with going and running the raid again and getting this gear. The raid's pretty simple, pretty easy. But when it comes to getting this gear, I don't want to have to switch this again. Yes, I can get better rolls, but a lot of people are grinding a lot for their gear. All pinnacles are gone. Recluse, Luna's How, Revoker. I mean, Mountaintop Recluse is the set you run for raids. There is no better set. Mountaintop is good for damage, good for ad clear. Recluse is god tier for all this, and they're going to be god. And odds are they'll add it back again another season. You know, again, I'm all for change and having the meta switch, but I'm not so much when that meta touches in PvE. I was not a fan of when the sniper rifle meta changed, at least as hard as it did. They completely made Lunafaction boots obsolete, which made Warlocks obsolete. No one really needed well. There's multiple teams who were running raids successfully with actually really better success than most other teams without running any Warlocks at all, because there was no use for them. You'd have a bunch of, well, Titans and Hunters. You get Tether in there and Bubble, the Celestial Nighthawk. It's changes that they're making that they're not really thinking about. So, maybe they'll see this and they'll listen, who knows. Again, the solutions that I've come up with are not perfect, but it is 100 times better than what Bungie currently wants to do.